Hey guys, it's Ozimon. Recently I've been going through like Twitter and like different Japanese learning communities and seeing, a whole different range of like trains of thoughts and just kind of trying to like broaden my opinion, my like understanding of like good ways to learn Japanese. And there's things I've noticed like that there's a lot of little things that these groups never talk about, never touch on, that like throughout my whole immersion journey and learning Japanese journey, I've kind of like thought a lot of things but haven't seen them talked about much online or in groups of people. So today I wanted to take the opportunity to go through just 5 little tips, I guess you could call them, like topics, just some things I've thought about learning Japanese that I've found over my years of studying it. All right, now the first one, and I think probably one of the biggest ones that you see it every now and then, people kind of touch on it, but no one really talks about how much like books can fuck up your accent. Like if you read right from the start, right, and you just read, you read all the time and all you're doing is reading, you're not getting any input basis through listening to understand how to pronounce what you're reading on the page. You're reading something and just making up some sort of understanding of what it should sound like that you've just plucked out of thin air. Like where have you gotten this basis of how to understand what you were reading and how to pronounce what you're reading? Yeah, you'll be able to understand it, but you're not gonna, when you say it in your head, it's gonna be completely different to how a native would say it in their head. So if you're just constantly reading and getting no, listening input, you're gonna, when you come to output, sound like a complete idiot, because all you're gonna be doing is making up pronunciations and everything for what everything should sound like while you're reading. Like, I don't understand how people can come to the conclusion that that's gonna allow you to become good at speaking Japanese. Like, where's that idea come from? I just don't get it. So I think, yeah, it's good to read, and reading's great, it can be a really great source and a great way to improve your Japanese, but you need to supplement it with listening, or really your basis should be listening. I mean, depending on what your goals are, that might change. However, you do need to listen a lot too, otherwise what you're reading is just gonna form bad habits and you're gonna sound ridiculous when you try to speak. So that's, the first kind of thing I see that not many people touch on. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about is when you're learning a language, like when you're learning Japanese, there is no such thing as fluency. Like this is probably talked about a little bit more, especially in like immersion learning communities. But when you're just talking about the general community of language learners, Japanese learners, there's such an obsession with trying to reach fluency. But what I think a lot of these people don't understand is that your progress in a language goes up, like it goes higher and higher very slowly in little increments. There's no like specific set level where you reach it and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm fluent. Like, it's just not a thing that exists. Like, you can actually just keep learning a language forever. I mean, even in English, say, there's still ways you could improve your English, even if you're a native speaker. Get better at writing. You can even get better at speaking, like public speaking, all different kind of things. Speaking more, effectively, being able to speak and like influence people and have like, hold kind of convincing power even in your speech. There's a lot of ways you can improve even your English. So when you even talk about learning another language, you can infinitely get better at that language. And there's no, like, I don't know how, people always talk about, defining fluency and all that, but if you realize the concept that you just get better forever and there is no such thing as fluency, there's no point to even define it. And it stops this whole bullshit of like comparing people and like how to get fluent in Japanese in however long. Like, since there's so many facets, say you want to be like a brilliant novelist in Japanese, like you just want to write great novels in Japanese, you probably don't even need to listen ever. You just read all day, write all day, and just do that. You can completely ignore the spoken part of the language. But if you want to become really, really good at speaking in front of people, like public speaking, speaking to multiple people, you have to, do things tailored towards that to get good at that. So there's so many different facets of language learning. There's no point talking about how to get fluent or how to achieve fluency, because fluency is such a, arbitrary concept that doesn't exist. There's just different different parts of learning a language, different parts of every language. And all you do when you learn a language is just try and get good at certain things. Maybe you're good at all of them. So I just think for that reason, there's no point even talking about what is fluency and how to reach it. Now, the third thing that I want to talk about, this I've never seen anyone talk about ever in the immersion learning or learning community whatsoever for languages. I think people need to understand that your general health and your general well-being is going to affect your language learning and the speed at which you learn Japanese to such a high degree. So it doesn't mean you need to be like, exercising, being like a bloody athlete or something. All I mean is that if you're sleeping 4 hours a night, good luck ever learning a language in like a reasonable amount of time. You need to be sleeping like properly and like not be, you know, some fucking lazy person and like sit around all day. You got to be kind of active, you know, like a general health shit, but mostly just sleep. Get a good amount of sleep. Otherwise your brain's not going to be functioning. Your like concentration will go to shit. You're not going to be able to remember anything because your memory is going to be, you know, 1/5 of what it would be if you were sleeping properly. And there's just going to be so many different things. Like I said, decreased motivation as well, like decreased concentration, you know, decreased everything, all the biological processes involved in learning a language, you know, memory and all that, are all just going to go out the window as soon as you just don't do anything good for your health and completely don't sleep and do anything like that. So it doesn't matter too much, you know, about all the health stuff, but like just be generally, you know, healthy and sleep. Sleep is the best thing. You just got to be sleeping a lot if you want to be memorizing things and progressing each day in your language. Now, the fourth kind of little thing that I want to talk about here is I don't think early output is as bad as everyone makes it out to be. I've talked about this in, you know, the first video I ever did on the my 3 years of refold and all that stuff. I talked a lot about like a little bit of this. I think I touched on it, but I kind of outputted like pretty early on, like almost right from the start. And if anything, I feel like it just helped my Japanese. That's not to say that you should just output all day and output willy-nilly and just, you know, never listen or anything. But I think that most likely, at least this is how it is in my experience, but if you're still immersing and are getting a lot of immersion, speaking can be of aid to your Japanese progress. Like, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. That whole thing of like, oh, early outputting is bad and stuff I think that comes from looking at the general language community and seeing these idiots like output from day one, like reading a grammar book and like trying to speak to people using that. But, you know, I think if you've learned a language through mostly immersion and then you can speak it at all, like you can put shit together and start speaking a bit, you're probably at a level where you can already speak without, you know, hugely damaging your speaking. As long as you're getting immersion and all that and you're communicating with people, I think that's still going to, even if you make mistakes, it's gonna, you know, you're gonna be able to fix them over time. Because I made a huge amount of mistakes and made some bad habits back at the start, but my conceptual knowledge of what the language should sound like got it to the point where I could just get rid of the mistakes straight away. And yeah, you make mistakes and make some bad habits, but I think those bad habits probably are outweighed by the benefits of speaking relatively early on. Like I said, it doesn't mean you have to speak like, and you know, speak 10 hours a day or anything crazy like that. But I think speaking can be beneficial, you know, in terms of just making your language ability better. And as well, not only that, it also allows you to make people, you know, Japanese friends or anything like that. And then you're going to have more added motivation to learn the language because you're actually going to know people from the country, you know, from Japan. So you're going to have more motivation, and as well, you're going to be able to speak with them to improve your ability of speaking. Like, it almost seems strange to me how people think it's that bad to early output. Yeah, it's not great, like as in like you shouldn't just early output, like you shouldn't just output, but I think if you add immersion and output together, you know, it's not as bad as people make it out, and if anything, I think it has a net positive effect on your Japanese ability in the long term. Now the fifth thing, and the final thing I want to talk about here, is all the little details surrounding immersion, surrounding, you know, all the processes of learning a language in Japanese, don't fucking matter. Like the little things don't matter that much, because all that really matters in the end is that you're immersing and that you're, you know, just listening and like doing a lot of immersion and progressing through just watching stuff. Like it doesn't matter what you watch to that degree. Yeah, you can like make the process better and like you make Anki, like do a lot of stuff to Anki, to the algorithm, make it better, streamline the process a little bit. But at the end of the day, the majority of the process remains the same. And even if you change all these like little things, it does add up, but it doesn't matter that much. Like if anything, I think we should all just focus on the real baseline principles of immersion learning and use that to get to a high level of Japanese. I think all the little details, they're fun to talk about and they're fun to think about and like, you know, try and optimize a way to learn it. But in practicality, you know, a lot of people don't have time to think about that bullshit, you know, because it is a lot of thinking and it's a lot of, you know, like pondering around of like, what should you do here? What should you do here? But like, I think if you just keep the baseline kind of rules of immersion learning, it doesn't matter so much what you listen to, for example. Or like, say you're gonna read, what do you read? Like, I don't think that stuff matters to that degree. Like I say, you know, if you probably shouldn't watch anime if you want to speak well, but we've seen plenty of people get really good at Japanese just from anime. You know, take Matt versus Japan. I'm sure he didn't just immerse in anime, I know he didn't, but like, you know, it's like, he didn't learn it the same way I did through YouTube and all that, and he still speaks absolutely amazing. So clearly, you know, there is a difference to it. Like you can streamline the process, make it a little bit better and all that, but the end result is going to be pretty similar regardless of what you do. All I'm saying with that is just, yeah, take into a lot of things, like little details into consideration, but just don't get so caught up with that you forget just the baseline stuff that really matters. Just listen, just read, just whatever, just immerse, and that's what's going to get you to your goal of wanting to speak Japanese or any other language. Alright guys, that's it for this video today. Let me know in the comments if you want me to talk about anything in particular, or if you've got, you know, some requests for videos or anything like that, or some stuff you're wondering about. If not, I've got my Discord in the description and Patreon, all that stuff, like I always talk about. And yeah, that's it guys. Thanks for watching.